Hi everyone. If you can hear me, just put a yes in the comments, just so I know I'm coming through to you loud and clear, and then we can get started. So I'm seeing quite a few of you in at the moment. Great, Alan. Thank you for letting me know that you can hear me. That's great. I know now that I can get on with it. Anyway, folks, welcome back to Gardener's Question Time. And today I'm going to be going through some questions that I've had via the YouTube channel and some of your questions as well. So there's a few things that I want to say before we continue, and that is, if you have a question, put it all in capitals, otherwise I'm going to miss it, and you may have to repeat your question now and then if I do miss it. I will do my best to keep up with them. Obviously things move pretty fast, as you know, in the chat. So I'm going to say hello to a few people first off, and if I don't get you all, I do apologize. So there's quite a lot of you in. We've got MH here, Max Films, Stephen Luna, Rob from Allotment and Gardening in the Attic is here. Let's have a look. Laura Fry is here. Laura, thank you very much for the super chat. I really appreciate that. There we go. Draw Lots Gardens here. Chris from Exploring Nature Together is here. There's huge amounts of you here already. Let's have a look who else we got. Diane is here. Soul Search Gurus here. Sarah Royal is here. Wow, there's so many of you. Liz is here. Liz, I think you have a spanner. I'm not sure. Can you let me know? And if not, I will try and add it for you. So many people here. Cherry, Virginia Palmer, Alan Target, Ripley Volts. Sorry if I've got that wrong. Owen is here. God, there's so many of you. Sarah, Deb, Vincent, Matthew, Lisa, Frank. Right, guys, there's so many of you here now. I'm going to, I'll come back to some more of you in a little bit. So today, there's not really a theme as such. I'm just here to help you with any questions you've got. I've got a list of about 14 or 15 questions here that have been asked via email and comments and things like that. So I will run through some of those. So don't forget, if you want to ask a question, put it all in capitals, and I'll get through to some of those. Now, if you haven't already, make sure you give this video a thumbs up and share it out with your friends on other social media. So let's have a look through some of the comments here, and we'll see if we can find some questions. So the first one I've come across here, where's it gone? God, this chat's moving so fast, guys. It comes from Lisa Reese. What can I sow now without grow lights? Lisa, you can do most of the brassicas now, your onions, shallots, things like that. All of these sort of cold climate vegetables will do really well at the moment. And you may have to germinate them in the house though, because it's still too cold outside to germinate. But once they've germinated, you'll be able to put them out in a greenhouse or a tunnel, but just have that fleece ready so that that you can cover them over. Things like beetroot, Boltardi's a really good variety for sowing at the moment. Your peas, you know, so there's loads and loads to sow at the moment. It's great to see you all chatting to each other and saying hello and everything else. Okay, so the next one I've got here comes from Adam Elliott. Having trouble propagating sage. Any tips? With sage, you're better off doing it via cuttings, and you're going to need to select, you get much better results if you actually cut into hardwood with sage rather than the soft sappy growth, because it dries out too quickly. So get some sort of lignified growth, and make sure you tear heel when you cut it. So don't just cut it dead straight, try and tear that heel, and that will give you a much better chance of rooting. And give it a good dip in some rooting hormone, and if you don't have any of that, honey works really well as a rooting hormone. And strike that into a really gritty compost, at least 50% compost, 50% grit, and that should take it quite easily. And keep a dome over the top of it, keep some humidity in so that it doesn't dry out in the meantime. Okay, let's have a look here. Sorry guys, this chat is going so fast. Right. Kathy asks, when I grow turnips, both in the ground and pots, I get leaves but no roots. Any ideas? Yeah, you've got too much nitrogen. So it's giving you lots of top growth, and you need more potassium and phosphorus. So it'd be interesting to know in what you're actually feeding with. If it's just your soil, maybe there's just too much nitrogen in your soil. A soil test would sort of clarify that. But if you're growing huge amounts of top growth and no roots, you're way too much nitrogen involved for you. Okay, let's have a look here. And Rob, it's the same with Swede as well. It's probably too much nitrogen there. Get a lot more potassium and phosphorus. Okay. So the next one comes from Stephen Luna. What size container for potatoes, and when should you start them? Right. That is, funny enough, one of the questions I've also had from... Wait with me a second and I will find it. Well, do you know what? I can't see it on, we'll come across it anyway, guys, but I've also had that question from somebody else, and I will mention them when I come across it. But Stephen, I use 30-litre containers. Now in the US, that would be 8 US gallons. I buy them from oaklandgardens.co.uk in the UK. And for those of you watching, just to let you know, Oakland Gardens are going to be doing a special on them in the middle of next month. So if you aren't already subscribed to my newsletter or my blog letter, go to my website, simplifygardening.com, and in the right-hand address bar, you will see a sign up for the blog. The details of that discount will be in there, and it's quite a substantial discount on these containers. So if you're going to get them, wait till the middle of March for them, and I will get you that discount code. And it will only be running for a couple of weeks, and it will only be to Simplify Gardening members. So make sure that you are signed up to that blog, because that's where I'll be posting all about it. Now, but again, like I said, 8 US gallons or 30 litres. And like I said, it's a question I'm constantly asked, but that's what they are. Right, okay. Question. Right, sorry guys, I'm jumping about here because of the... Okay. So Donna Kennedy, do you need sun to germinate, or will heat work by itself? You don't need sun to germinate, but as soon as it does germinate, that's when you need the light, because the germination, it's under soil anyway, or vermiculite, and it doesn't really play a part. But as soon as that seedling pops its head through that soil, then you need the light. Otherwise, you're going to get long, leggy plants, and they'll be very weak and no good for you. Okay, so I'm going to go to one from a very special viewer who's on today, and that's Lisa. And Lisa is the little girl who challenged me to a pumpkin grow off, and many of you have already sided with Lisa and that she's going to win this, so that's fantastic. I'm going to give you a fight, mind, Lisa. But Lisa asks, what do you feed dragon fruit, and how do you grow them properly? So dragon fruit, they need, let's just check what you want there, sorry. Okay, so with your dragon fruit, you need a balanced feed for them. So something like 20-20-20, they need pretty much everything, whether you can get a 10-10-10, a 15-15-15, it makes no difference as long as it's balanced, okay? A blood, fish and bone would work quite well with this, but you can just buy a specific balanced feed. Now, when you're watering them, you need to water them from below. They don't like being watered from above. So soak the actual pot that they're in a bucket or something like that, and soak those roots. Now, dragon fruit, they can get quite large plants, so they need a good support structure. And they're going to take you about 2 years before they fruit, Lisa. So be prepared to wait for a little while, okay? Okay, so next question I've got here is from Gordon, and he asks, how much do you spend on compost, or is it all homemade? Gordon, a lot of people saw one of my last videos where I harvested huge amounts of compost, and I still buy compost in, but I make a lot of it as well. But I'm not adverse to buying compost because it's an investment in your soil quality in your garden. And Liz will tell you that I have beautiful soil, and it's quite deep, but it takes huge amounts of compost to get it that way. So I'm not adverse to buying it. I still spend quite a lot of money, maybe a couple of £100 a year on compost, but I do have quite a large garden for that, and I produce probably around about 9 ton a year as well. But we'll talk more about that because there's another question about it later on. Okay, let's scroll through here. Okay, so we've got Kid Paver and wife. I planted potatoes and onions before the frigid weather and snow in and under compost. Will they survive? Potatoes should be okay as long as the frost hasn't got to them. The great thing for you is that snow is a really good insulator. Okay, and it'll protect them from the frost. If the frost gets down to them and they freeze, then those tubers are going to rot. Now, the other disadvantage for you is it's still really early for potatoes, and if they poke their heads early and then we have a frost, then that frost is going to take the tops off those potatoes. They will regrow, but you're going to end up with a weaker harvest. And earlier on about the potatoes, there was a part of the question I didn't answer, and that was we're going to be, if you're planting in containers, we'll be starting to plant them sort of mid-March. But if you're planting outside, you want to leave it to about 3 or 4 weeks before the last frost, whatever date that is with you. And then that'll give them time to germinate properly and start pushing through. And by that point, when they do break ground, you shouldn't have any more frosts, okay? Guys, DJ Simon Ross Price, don't forget, put your questions in capitals for me, please, guys. Hi, Tony. Will sulfate of ammonia reheat a compost if not enough green material? Sulfate of ammonia would heat your compost. I don't recommend you using it. You're much better off getting more green material. And if you can't get it at that time, just leave the compost sit with all the browns and then mix the greens in as and when you do get it. Okay. Let's have a look what we got you then. When's the best time to move lavender? Just as it's starting to have this year's growth. So as it's early sort of spring, as it's starting to push out, that's a really good time because the plant will have enough energy that it can survive the move, but it's already growing, so it can create more energy. It's probably about the best time, sort of early to mid-spring. Okay. Sorry about the delay on this, guys. I'm struggling to keep up with the chat here. Okay. What's the best straw to use for mulching? You can use any straw for mulching. All right. I like the rapeseed straw only because it's already chopped up, and that's what I've used on all the potatoes and stuff for the last year or two. It's a fantastic straw. It doesn't mat down, but it creates that insulation layer. It holds the water really well. Whereas with normal bale straw, then you've got to like try and break that up so it doesn't sit as compact as the rapeseed. So I really like the rapeseed straw. Okay. So LB Retro. Hello, Tony. Been with you a long time. I was your 1,000th subscriber. Thank you very much for that. You certainly have been with me for a long time, because I remember hitting 1,000 subscribers, and that was about 9 years ago. So it's been a long time getting here. And funny enough, there's still a lot of people right from back then still watching now, and that's great. So thank you for the support and the continued support. So Jack Jones asks, hello, I want to grow sweet corn in pots. What size and how many? If you're growing it in containers permanently, if you check back to last year's video where I did a patio gardening video, that video, I grew sweet corn in one of those 30-litre container. And I didn't plant them in there originally. I planted them in a deep root trainer, and then I transplanted them into that. And I put 4 corn in that 30-litre container. So you need something that's got a really heavy base, because sweet corn get tall and they catch the wind, but you need to plant them in a block. It's no good putting a line of containers in. So if you're going to grow multiple, grow 16 and put them in like 4 of those containers and block them together. Okay. Next one. Karen Lake, how do I get my avocado plant to produce leaves on the new growth? Karen, I don't know where you are with your avocado plant, whether you've cut it back or not. Excuse that car going past. I don't know if you've cut it back or not, but what you need to do, if you're pushing out new growth at the moment, those leaves will come, but you may need to cut your avocado back to force buds lower down to form. So just bear that in mind. If the leaves don't push out now, sort of April time, somewhere around there, April, May, then you may need to cut the plant back a bit until you hit some other buds, and it'll force those buds to blow. Okay. Yeah, Dave's just shouting that he's still watching and he's been here since the start. Yes, you have, Dave. Way back then, I remember when we were both just putting out our first videos. Crazy times. And YouTube was a totally different animal back then, guys. It wasn't even owned by Google at that point. I remember joining in 2007. And it's funny because YouTube had only been around for 2 years, and it came out in 2005, and it was a completely different format. And God, it was a nightmare trying to get a video found there. Okay, so where are we going now here? So Kimmy asks, Tony, can I grow sweet corn in a 3x4 square in a raised bed? Yes, you can. And it's a really good way to grow it, as long as they're in blocks. And the reason being you want them in a block and not really in a row is because they're wind pollinated, and you get a much better pollination that way. Not to say that you won't get pollination if they're in a row, but the likelihood is that if the wind blows across them, then that pollen is going to be blown away from the rest of them. So plant them in a block and something's going to catch the pollen. Okay, the next one. Cherry, can I grow runner beans up the stalks of Jerusalem artichokes? Yes, you can. What you may find, though, is the Jerusalem artichokes are not as fast growing as the runner beans will be, unless you plant them much later. Now, this is an issue with the Three Sisters also, because the idea is you grow corn and then you grow beans around the corn and then your pumpkins around. But invariably, the corn takes forever to get going and the beans are all really long, so they end up twisting up and growing all along the floor. The only way that these sort of things work is if you plant the actual support plants first, and I'm talking maybe a month before. So you need to get them started early and then put the beans in as a seed at the base rather than as a transplant, okay? Jasper. Sorry, guys. Let me just put that on silent. Someone thinking it's funny to phone me. Right, okay. So Jasper asks, is it necessary to add bagged animal manures to potatoes grown in bags? It's not necessary. You can just grow them in soil in bags if you wanted. The animal manures will help. And I've got quite an interesting video, which I did start filming last year. And because I was ill, I didn't get around to finishing it. And I'm going to repeat that video this year. So stay tuned come harvest time, because you will see the video I'm on about. I'm not going to give it away at the moment, but it's a really interesting video and it's an eye-opener, so stay tuned for that. And it's based all around your sort of manures and stuff like that, okay? All right. So we've got that one already. Where to sell seed trays that won't disintegrate when getting your seedlings out? Well, Oakland's got some really good strong ones, and I'm not sure of the name of the company, but Charles Dowding also worked with a company and produced some really strong cell trays, and I got some of them too, and they're really good. So there are various people now making, rather than the flimsy seed trays, they're making things that are going to last, and they're durable. So instead of wasting plastic, you're going to be able to use it for year upon year upon year. But there are various companies out there. You just need to look for them. Okay, third attempt. Sorry, Ripley. I missed planting my garlic last fall. We're about 6 weeks from our last frost date. Is it still worth planting this year? Yes, still plant it. As long as they get a couple of weeks of frost, they will, or cold weather below 10, they'll do fine. I only put mine in about a month or so ago because I was behind this year, and they've just started popping their heads through the ground. And to be honest with you, all you're doing over winter anyway, you don't want a lot of top growth. You're looking to build that root structure so that they can form nice fat bulbs. So get it in, but don't delay any longer, okay? Get it done. Okay, so I'm going to go back to another question on here now. Law Jones asks, in Western Canada, I can't seem to find the product called Compost. They do have manure, potting soil, mushroom and sheep compost though. Law, basically compost is potting soil out in the States and Canada, okay? So if you can buy a potting soil, then you can use that. It's pretty much the same thing. But I would suggest making it yourself, because you will never get the quality in a bag that you could produce at home. Okay, I'm gonna want to talk about Liz's book. Now, a friend of mine, Liz Zorab, she just let's hide that. She just released her book Grounded, and it's a beautifully illustrated book. Now, basically, Liz has spent ages writing this. It's really well thought out. It shows a journey of how she's growing in permaculture wise and producing fantastic crops. Got a beautiful garden that is like a forest there, and it's just always growing always growing really well, and she's done it so. The book is fantastic, I have to say, and she's selling them by the bucket loads. Now, Liz, I don't know if you're still here. If you want to put your link in the notes below for everybody to come to your website. I think it's bythefarm.co.uk, but Liz will put a note down there. And the great thing is this book just takes you on Liz's journey. It just shows how much it's improved her health, and the fact that she is supporting her family by growing the food in her sort of like 1/8 of an acre of a plot. And she's doing such a fantastic job at it as well. And I was quite honoured to be asked to write a testimonial for the book, and I was very lucky, and I got to read the book before it went to print, and I have to say it's fantastic. And if you want to read a really good gardening book, it definitely should be part of your gardening sort of library. So check that out. Liz Zorab. It's called Grounded. You can buy it on Amazon, and you can, if you're in the UK, you can buy it direct from Liz's website. But it's available on Amazon and all good bookstores, guys. So so go and get yourself a copy. You won't be disappointed. It's the Steve Show. Thank you very much for your super chat. I really appreciate it. So you've got a question. Let me see. I can't put that on the screen. No. So I'm in zone 6A and I'm growing determinate Roma tomatoes from last year's crop. I want to graft indeterminate San Maranzos. Also, will that make them determinate or indeterminate? Yeah, it'll make them a determinate. So basically, the root stock is what dictates whether or not your tomatoes are determinate or indeterminate. Now, you'd be better off if you wanted to graft your San Maranzos to get a rootstock called Submarine. Now, these are grown as a rootstock. They're fantastic rootstock, and they'd be really good for grafting onto. If you want to graft them to your Roma, then you can do, but bear in mind that will make them a determinate, so it will control the size of the bush, but it may also alter the size of the fruit that you would get from your San Maranzos. Let's have a look where else we are. No, I've done that one. Sorry, guys. So cherry pie is so epic gardening. Kevin has a nice durable trays for sale. I'd love to order, but I'm afraid I will never get it due to poor postal system here in South Africa. Cherry, I don't know what the postal system's like. Yeah, he's had them little 6 trays, so 6 cells, and you can pile them on a tray, and they're really good. I saw them myself on Kevin's video. He's got lots of really good stuff. So I would take the chance. If you want them, take the chance. I mean, at the end of the day, the worst thing that can happen is you don't receive them, and you'll have to contact the seller and tell them you haven't received them and get a refund. If you pay through PayPal, they guarantee you get your money back. So that's maybe a thought for you. So you may have to open a dispute, but it's a way of guaranteeing that you get the product. Okay, let's have a look what we got here. So Shafin, hi, I'm looking to grow climbing roses, but I did not find any video where they grow them in containers. Can they be grown in containers? If you have a big enough container, anything can be grown in it. And the only issue you've got is with a climber, it's very difficult to transplant it afterwards, and you would need to renew that soil in a container because it's only finite the amount of nutrients in it, and eventually you're going to exhaust the soil in that container. Is there any particular reason why you want to grow in a container? Because if it's because it's on a patio or something, maybe you could lift a patio slab and just, create a very small 2x2 bed or something like that. That would probably be better. But yes, you can. If it's a big enough container, you can grow them in a container. You would just need to find a way of replenishing that soil without, without damaging it, because like a bush variety, you could just tip it on its side, pull the pot off, and then replant it. Whereas with a climber, it's a bit awkward because it's obviously attached to something else. You can't really lay it down. Let's have a look what else we got here. God, this chat is going so fast, guys. Hi, Jay. How are you doing? I notice you're in. Epic gardening trays are pricey. Double check pricing to understand what you're getting, though. Good point there, Jay. Remind. Yeah, so Liz is reminding everybody to put your questions in capitals so I can see it. Thank you, Liz. Because without it, Liz will tell you guys the chat goes so fast. It's really hard to see what is just other people chatting and what are questions that you want me to answer. Okay, what's the best way to get rid of slugs? So I did a video a little while back on 6 ways of killing slugs or to get rid of slugs. And before I talk about that, I just want to sort of say one thing. You don't want to eradicate slugs from your garden completely because they have a job to do, okay? But what we need to do is we need to move them away from the vegetables that they're going to affect, okay? So in that case, by far the best method would be to use nematodes. Now, I've got another question about nematodes and I'll get to that in a moment. So I won't go into that in a second, okay? But by far the best option is nematodes. The second best, I would probably be bringing in wildlife into the garden. So you need to build a pond or something like that. Once you bring a water feature into the garden, you're going to attract animals, and that'll be hedgehogs and, little newts and frogs, things like that. All of these, they relish slugs, so they will go around the garden and they will deal with those slugs for you. But there are many other tips, so have a look for that video. All you've got to do is go to the search bar of YouTube and type in slugs and simplify. So any video you're searching for me, just put whatever it is and simplify at the end of it, and you will probably come up with my video. With slugs, you'll find it in the top 5 videos, even if you just put slugs into the search bar anyway, because it is a popular video. While I'm at it, I am going to find this slug one, because I know I've got one here somewhere. That's been done. Right, so Island Gardener asked, what do I do when making nematodes if we don't have any infected slugs? So that comes out to that slug video I was on about. And basically what that is, I showed in another video how to make nematodes, because they are very pricey. So if you want to buy them, they come in like a clay, they're suspended in a clay, and they're very expensive, but you can make your own. Now, what I will say, Island Gardener, is that if you've got slugs, you will have nematodes. Nematodes are one of the most abundant species on the planet. Now, there is a specific variety that attacks slugs, okay? But if you've got slugs in your garden, not all of them, but some of them will be infected with nematodes. So all you have to do is put enough into the bucket, and you're guaranteed one will be infected, and then that will pass it on to the rest. Another question I had recently is, do you keep feeding these slugs? You put the raft to put the slugs on, so it gives them time to affect each other, and then once they've eaten enough of that food, they'll fall in the water, and then they'll release those nematodes into the water, which you then water on your ground, okay? So, and I've only brought that up because that was another question I had before. Okay. Let's have a look here. God, there's so many things. These videos are just shooting past. Okay, right. So the next one. Excuse me, let me have a little drink. Hi, Tony. A quick question. Would I need to wash the root pouches from cannabis plants as I have had some given? Depends, really. The cannabis plants themselves aren't going to affect anything you're growing, so there's no need. But it depends where you're going to put them, because the smell of cannabis is going to be around them for a little while. And if they're out by your back door, the last thing you might want is the waft of cannabis coming into the house. So you could wash them. It's a good way to to clean out anything in it. And the other thing as well, it would wash out any chemicals that they've used, because cannabis growers, they tend to grow hydroponically, and so they're using the sort of liquid feeds in something like an autopot system, and because they are not there, because they don't want to risk getting caught. So because they're using a lot of those feeds, they're chemically based. So if you're organic, you may want to give them a really good wash, get rid of those trace elements of those chemicals. Right, let's have a look here. So I'm in zone 5 US. Which seedlings should I begin now or soon, or should I wait? If you've got an indoor growing area that you can supply light and heat to, well, you can pretty much start sowing whenever you want to. But what I would say is zone 5, I think your May time for your, I might be wrong there, I think it's May for your last frost, but it's still pretty cold. So if you haven't got the space to be laying out plants because they're going to grow bigger, wait till about 4 weeks before your last frost and then start sowing. And that way, as they are ready to be transplanted on, you can just get them straight out into the ground, and you haven't got to worry about trying to store lots of large plants. If you've got a polytunnel or greenhouse and you can provide some sort of heat, whether that's from electrical source or gas source, or even a hotbed, something like that, then that might help you, and you can start pretty much whenever you wanted. Karen, whiteflies are so hard to get rid of. They are a pain in the backside. I did a video year before last, I think it was, about getting rid of whiteflies. I don't know if Liz can find that and throw the link in for you guys. Now, that video covers lots of different things, and in fact, it relates back to another question I've got here, so I will cover that next. But with whitefly, it's a case of they tend to really affect things like your brassicas and stuff. And once that temperature gets warm, they're really hard to get rid of. But you can beat them, and you can beat them with things like neem, or a product that's really, really good. And I think you guys in the US can get it as well, in Canada and things in Australia, is a product called SB Plant Invigorator. Now, it's not cheap. It's a total organic solution, okay, soap-based, but it is fantastic, and it's really good for getting rid of whiteflies and things like that. But another thing it's really good for is controlling powdery mildew, so you get really 2 for 1. But if you can find that video and watch that, and it's going to give you lots of other sort of examples as well. Now, the other question I had on that, let me see if I can find it. Oh yeah, it came from David Tron, and he asks, what's the ratio of neem to water? So if you're mixing neem oil, you need to be mixing around about 4 teaspoons of neem oil to a gallon of water. So and then because it's an oil, it will need to be emulsified. So you'll need to really give it a vigorous shake so that that oil sort of emulsifies into the water, and then you're free to go. And that will save for as long as you need it to use. So once you've mixed it, you can leave that in a bottle, just give it a shake, and then keep using it. All right. So that's got both of those questions answered. So let me just mark that off that it's answered. Okay. Let's have a look. What else have we got? So escaping the rat race. Love the name. What size vegetable garden would you need for 60 to 70% self-sufficiency? That would depend on how many there are of you. If it's just you, you wouldn't need that big a garden. If you've got a family of 4, then I'm managing to do it on, I think it's maybe about a quarter of an acre, maybe. I use 3 full-size allotment plots. So to give you some sort of idea, they're 195 feet long by 22 feet wide each, and they're all together. So effectively, I got 195 feet by 66 feet. So it's, you know, it's a fair size garden, and we pretty much grow everything we eat. So and I've got a family of 5. There's me, Tina, and the 3 kids. So that also relates back to another question I've had. But for that 60 to 70%, if there's a family of 4, you could probably get away. You could probably do it 60% in an average sort of back garden, a terrace back garden. You should be no reason. If you multi-sow and you harvest multiple crops throughout the year. So when you plan well, you can, say for argument's sake, take out beetroot and then put in sweet corn, or vice versa. So you get multiple crops in the same area. As long as you manage that well and you grow crops on to seedling stage, so you can put straight out and transplant straight away, then you should get multiple crops, 2 or 3 crops in a space. There'd be no reason a small garden wouldn't allow you to be 60% for an average size family. Right. The other question I had then about that. Can't find it. I'll come to it anyway. Thanks, Liz, for putting up the slug video. So grow your own life. Any tips on growing asparagus in a large 75-litre pots? Is there anything I can plant with them? You could plant cash crops, things like radish, lettuce, things like that in with them. Low story things, and that don't need huge amounts of light. So things like that, lettuce would be fantastic around them. You could end up plant them with those. They will go in a 75-litre pot fine. I would only put 1 in their mind, because they are very hungry plants. They get very tall, so you need some sort of support structure for them as well. But yeah, I mean, cash crops can go in them, something that's going to grow pretty quickly, that isn't, is going to be harvested before they start pushing through. And then when they push through, you could then plant a second crop around there again, Let's have a look. Where are we? So Chris Terrell, hi Tony, I used a compost blocking machine many years ago with peat-based compost. Thought these were great. Have you tried using homemade compost with one of these tools, and how successful are you? Funny enough, I was going to buy one of those tools last year, and a friend of mine lent me one to try. And it's, for the amount of plants I'm growing, it was a real faff. And the reason for it is, to get the block to stick together really well, you have to mix your soils, you have to add loads and loads of water to them. And it's like making cement, and then you're blocking it. And if these dry out, they fall apart. So for me, it was a case of deciding just to stick to the plug trainers that I have, and that way I knew I didn't have to worry about them. And it was part of the time when I tried getting away from plastic. Now, you all know my feeling about plastic, so especially one-time plastics, we've got to get a handle on those. But for long-term plastics, well, you know, most of the stuff in here is plastic, you know, and it's fine because I'm using it and using it and using it. You know, it's a good product. We can't ever get away from using it, but we need to use it much smarter than we are. I wanted to get away from that, but I wasn't able to. I had really poor crops, so I decided that I'd go back to plastic, but I'd make sure I invested in proper seed trays so that I could use them year on, year out. Okay. So, Vivian, winter planted potatoes, 8B below, been below freezing. Vivian, are we talking like potatoes for Christmas, or are we talking planting now for potatoes? If you are, I wouldn't suggest. I'd hold off till the middle of March. And the reason being, even like my containers, I won't plant till the middle of March because my last frost date is the beginning of May. So the last thing I want to do is have huge top growth of potatoes in a bucket or a container and then have to move that out and risk damaging all them homes. So I plant in the middle of March, and I'm going to get, you know, sort of top growth about a foot high out to the top of the bucket by the time they need to go out. So it's early enough. I think people are they're way too quick to plant things because they want to crop earlier and earlier and earlier. And we have to work with our weather, not against it. Now, don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean that sometimes we don't need to challenge ourselves and try and push the envelope. But I think sometimes you're pushing it a little bit too far, you know? Yeah, it's a good point, Liz. Strawberries grow really well around the asparagus as well, and I've seen that working with Liz's beds when I've been over there. They've Liz just into plants with everything, and that's why her garden works so well. And on a side note to that, guys, as well, is that when you interplant with things instead of having like a monocrop, you're much less likely to deal with pest issues because certain things will help others and mask scents and things like that. But I always find that if I interplant, I don't tend to have that many pests. So Jacko's allotment, do you use cocoa coir blocks at all? And if so, what do you use it, and do you mix it with compost, etc.? Yes, I do use it. I don't use it in the garden that much because I produce all my own, well, most of my own compost, but I use it for the house plants. It's really good for mixing with perlite and things. House plants, they need to drain, so you need to make sure they're not sat in water or the root systems will rot in them. So pretty much all of these house plants that I have and the grow room that's up there and everything else will all have coir of some sort. I've got a couple of blocks sat over there in the kitchen now, and you know, that'll be the base for most of the house plants soil formula when I make it up. As far as growing veg, though, I just stick to normal composts and I add perlite, vermiculite, or grit, depending what it is. And I may mix that my own compost with leaf mold, or I may buy shop bought compost as well, like, you know. Okay. Are you going to grow large condor potatoes this year? And what are you different from last year? That's from Senna. And I've also got one from Michael Lindsay asking what potato varieties I'm growing in 2021. So they pretty much relate to each other. So I am growing Condor again this year. It's the variety that's got the world record. So ideally you need to try and stick with it because you know it has the possibility to get up there. So I will be growing Condor again. And for Michael, I'll be growing Sapo Mira, Kestrel, Rudolph. I always grow Rudolph. They're a fantastic spud. Condor and Charlotte. And I may grow like a Maris Piper. I'm not sure yet. I have got seed potatoes from that, and I've also got Yukon Gold, thanks to Susan Connolly, who sent me a couple of tubers over, so I'll be putting those in as well. Okay. Anne Harris asks, should I start Japanese squash seeds in the greenhouse or straight in the ground? Squash benefits from starting in a warmer location, and you can do that in a greenhouse much earlier than you would put it in the ground. You also have, like, the ground will take forever to warm up. You're looking mid to late June for that. So you could be sowing in the end of May in a greenhouse, and when you're putting them out, you've got an established plant that'll do much better. If you've got a slug issue and that seedling just pops its head through and the slug takes the top off, well, you've just lost your seedling. So most stuff I do in the polytunnel or the greenhouse, and then I put it out as a transplant later on. And the other thing about that as well is if the weather's bad and the rain and everything else, well, you're protected in the greenhouse, aren't you? So they can still be ticking along until the weather's more sort of adverse to putting them out. Okay. How can I get rid of carrot fly? Preston, carrot fly, they fly really low to the ground. And that comes back to another one from D. Cooper asks why I have all the big blue drums around the garden. Are they for water? They were inherited when I took over one of the plots from an old gentleman called Keith, who has passed away now. Now, Keith originally had my plots, and as I took over land, as he got older and older, I kept taking on his plots. So he used them as water drums, but I use them for growing things in, like my carrots and parsnips and things like that. And I fill them with sharp sand, and then I'll core them out, and I will grow like show carrots and things like that in there. Now, because they're quite tall, carrot root fly, they fly low to the ground. So you can prevent that by having taller containers, and that's what I use the drums for. You can use a veggie mesh, like EnviroMesh, something like that, to protect them as well. That will stop a carrot root fly. And you can also interplant, so things like chives and onions and stuff planted around your carrots, you know, or some something that's really pungent smells will really help to mask those carrots. Now, another tip here would be when you're sowing your carrots, sow as thinly as possible. The less thinning out you do, the less chance you have of attracting a carrot fly in, because you won't be pulling so many carrots and then sort of bringing that carrot smell, which they sort of seem to hone in on. Okay. Lisa Reese saying whiteflies are so hard to get rid of. Yes, they are. And again, we've put a link down to the video for that. Alan, giving up going to Google my question. What was that question, Alan? Sorry, mate, I've missed that. Do you wanna try again? So, folks, just remember to put your questions in capitals for me, because I do miss them. It's really hard when when the chat is going so fast. So this one's Square Deal Tot. Hi Tony, quick question: would I need to wash the root pouches? We've answered that one already. So I don't know why I've pulled that one up again. I must have gone backwards. It does tend to jump about. No, wrong one. Sorry, the one above. That jumped as I clicked on it. So Claudia, are you going to have houseplant videos? Yes, I am. I did say I was going to. I've just not got around to it at the moment. I was writing my book, and unfortunately I had the hard drive in my Mac crashed, and as a consequence I lost all the work on my book. there was a backup happening to go to the cloud and to another server. And unfortunately, for some reason, the Mac decided it wasn't backing up and I didn't know about it. So I pretty much lost all of the book. I'm also in the middle of filming for a course as well. So at the moment, my head is sort of like all over the place with these things, but I am going to be doing these videos. Now, what I've decided is, because everybody's so used to my vegetable videos coming out on a Friday, I'm going to stick to that. So on a Friday will be my veg videos, but I'm going to add extra videos in the week. And on a Tuesday, we're going to have Houseplant Tuesday and Veg Friday. And that way, then if you decide that you don't want, the houseplants aren't for you, you can just tune in on a Friday as normal and you'll have that. So it's going to be additional, not instead of, okay? Okay. Sorry, guys, this chat is jumping around all over the place. I'm clicking on things and it's disappearing on me. Right. Mark Lee asks, am I able to grow chilies outdoors without using a greenhouse or cold frame? To be honest with you, you're going to really struggle. I've got, my chilies are actually here because even in the greenhouse at the moment, it's too cold to germinate them. Now I've got one of my Vitapods on the floor down there. The lights are off on it at the moment. I got a couple of chilies in there that I showed a while ago, but most of them have been planted on now, and they're in the grow room along with the house plants because that is heated and there's really good lighting in there. The issue you've got is that chilies need a really long growing season, and you're not going to get that by waiting to plant outdoors. And if you did it now, they would just never germinate. They're notorious for germination anyway. So you need that heat, as much as 20 plus degrees to get them to germinate. So you need that greenhouse, to be honest with you, at this time of year. If you're in the UK, if you're in a tropical country, then yeah, you can chuck them straight out, I expect, and it won't be a problem for you. Let's have a look here. I don't know how far behind the chat I am, but I'm trying to catch up, guys. Yay, I need all kinds of help with houseplants. Cheers. Good. I'm glad. We will be having these, like this is my Thai constellation here. We've got a Kentia palm here, but up in the grow room, we've got all sorts of things. And eventually I will be doing videos based all around those. As I can get some time, I'll come down here, I'll film multiple videos, and then we'll release one a week. So once it does start, they'll be regular on a Tuesday, okay? Right, I need another drink, guys. Any tips for miniature roses? I was gifted a half-dead baby. I'd like to bring it back. Fuzzy, what I would suggest you do is, first off, you probably don't know what the soil is like if it's in a pot. I'd think about replanting it or repotting it now. Do it now as the growth is going to be starting quite soon on it, and cut it right back. So maybe, a couple of inches above ground level. Give that root system a chance to establish, and then it'll push out new top growth, and that'll be the thing. And then if you saw in one of my last rose videos, I did I spoke about a pelleted rose feed. So get some of that into the soil as well, and that will give it its best start. But what you may find is, if you can give it a little bit of protection, so maybe put it in a polytunnel until it starts getting warmer and then put it out, that will help it to establish much better. But have a look at what the root system is doing, because sometimes they tend to rot off, and you can't bring something back until you know the whole facts, Okay. Do methods change based on the climate you are in, or can all methods work everywhere? They change. Now, most of the information I'm giving you, you could use in Australia. It would just be a different time of the year. Because when I talk about mulching potatoes for argument's sake. Well, that's still relevant because here we want it to retain moisture. Well, you're going to need to retain moisture in Australia, but it'll add the added bonus of insulating the container as well. So so all of the tips that I tend to give can be used or modified slightly for your growing areas, okay? But obviously, if you're living in somewhere like the South Pole, then guess what? You know, none of these tips are going to help you. Okay, I missed a couple of questions. This one here. How do you keep fungus gnats away and how to get rid of them? Fungus gnats are a pain in the backside, but it's all down to ventilation. So in the grow room, I've got fans that blow around, and fungus gnats like still air, and they like a dry surface of compost so they can lay eggs, but also they like standing water. So if you've got trays full of water, then that's no good to you. So you need to control that sort of that area. But I've got a video coming on that anyway with the house thing, so I'll go more in depth on that when it comes to it. Rob says I'm on the gin again. I wish, Rob. So for those of you in the comments at the moment, how many of you have bought a copy of Liz's book yet? If you have, let me know in the comments below. And if you haven't, then why not? You should really get a copy. It's really a good book, guys. All right. So if you haven't, let me know in the comments if you have. But if you haven't, get across to Liz's website or to Amazon and get yourself a copy. You won't be disappointed. So what's the difference between perlite and vermiculite? So they're both basically volcanic rock, okay? Now, vermiculite is good for, it holds water, okay? It's good for insulating across the top of seeds if you want to sow seeds, because it does let a little bit of light through and it's light, okay? Now, vermiculite, that's vermiculite, so it holds water, so it's good to mix into soil if you need to retain moisture. Whereas perlite, even though it will hold moisture, it actually aerates the soil and it allows the soil to drain better. So if you've got a heavy compost, if you add perlite to it, that will help drainage. Another way to help with the drainage would be to add grit, but perlite's so much lighter, and that's pretty much what it's been used for. Now, I use perlite in the grow room here to strike new seedlings, and that's just perlite. And the reason for that is because I need that water to pass right through, but just keep a humid environment around the root system until they get going, and then we can pot them on. So so one holds a lot of moisture and doesn't really drain as well, and the other one holds moisture but it drains very well. Okay, thanks Liz for putting up the rose video. Okay, Tony, what fertilizer do you use for onions? In our allotment shop, we have a dedicated onion fertilizer. I think the NPK on it is something like 6, 15, 12. So so basically it's just all designed towards the sort of potassium and phosphorus over nitrogen, okay? So to get that bulb growth. But you could use just blood, fish and bone, something like that. And in the States, it'd be blood meal and bone meal, and mix that together and then put that in. And that's going to give you adequate nutrition. You just need a slow release fertilizer. Okay. Okay. Here with Jesus, should I be using multi-purpose compost for my entire container garden? Okay, so multi-purpose compost is pretty much sterile when you buy it, because you get it in a bag, it's been heated to within its death. And if you look at my last compost video, I talk about shop bought compost, and then they sit in this bag, you know, that's sealed off for God knows how long before you come along and buy it. So there's not a lot of life in it, but it does hold nutrients, because more often than not, they're putting feed in, mixing that in as well. Okay. This is why I say that homemade compost is always much better, because of all the microbial life and everything else that's in it. Okay. And those are what's creating the feed for you. But as far as using it in a container garden, you will get good crops, but bear in mind, this feed will only last for about 3 to 6 months, depending what you're growing in it. So after that point, you're then having to feed your plants continuously. Now, if you're planting things that like a perennial or something like that, well, it's not really ideal. You need to put some sort of soil. So I mix it with like 50-50 soil, mix the compost 50-50 with some soil and some grit, and put that into a container, and it will probably do much better for your compost. And the soil will have microbial life, which will then inoculate the compost as well. So you'll get a growing soil life within the actual container. It'll be much better for you. Or mix it with some homemade compost. Again, that will add that soil life for you. Okay, so yeah, so loads of people are just adding lots of stuff in the chat and what have you, and talking amongst yourselves. I'm going to come back to my questions here now. Jeffrey asks, or he says he would like me to do some more beekeeping videos. Jeffrey, I decided to stop the beekeeping videos on this channel, and the reason for that was it was a gardening channel, and I know beekeeping is around gardening as well, but there are also plans for next year, and I just haven't got time this year with everything that's going on with the course, the book, and everything else. But there are plans for next year for a brand new YouTube channel and a brand new website. It's going to be called Learn Beekeeping Basics. There will be courses and everything around that as well. And I've already bought the domain names. I've got the YouTube channel, Learn Beekeeping Basics. If you pull that up on YouTube, you'll see it there. You can subscribe to it. There's no videos there yet, but as and when I get some time, I will start making content for that. I'm already filming when I'm at the bees, and then so I'll have the footage I require, and all I got to do is go out and film some stuff. So so you'll have that, and it'll be a dedicated channel just for the beekeeping. And the reason I separated them was because every time I put a beekeeping video on here, it died a death, because a lot of people are only interested in gardening, not the bees. And then what happened was, next time I put out a gardening video, YouTube didn't recommend it, because the beekeeping video killed the algorithm. All right. So that's that. So I've answered that one. I've answered that one. Answered all of those. I'll go down there now. We've covered David's question. Okay, so Laura Fry asks, do I have any first-hand experience growing potatoes or determinate potatoes in a bale of straw? I haven't grown them in a bale of straw. I've grown them like the roof stout method, where you place them on the soil and then you cover them with straw. And I would say that's very similar. The only disadvantage with growing in a bale of straw is there's no soil there at all. And I think the spuds need the soil. And I know lots of people who do straw bale gardening, but yet they're still adding soil within that. And I think you'd need to condition those bales as well. They would need to be in their final stages to get a good crop, I think. I've never done it, so I can't say from first-hand experience, although I have done the root stout method. But those potatoes with the root stout method were able to put their roots down into the soil below, and we just mulched them with straw after that. Okay. So what's this one? Hi, Tony. I never could grow courgettes or cucumbers without having fungi. Do you know a safe and organic product I can use? So yeah, so with your cucumbers and your courgettes, the fungus you're getting is powdery mildew. All right, and I did touch on this earlier on. There's a product called SB Plant Invigorator. It's not cheap, but you're only using 1 milliliter per liter of water. So the bottle goes a long way. I've still got the same bottle that I've been using for about 4 years, and I'm still probably not even a quarter of the way through it. So it is really cost effective, but there is an initial outlay with it. It's not cheap, but it is a fantastic for all things, like all pathogens like powdery mildews, fungus mildews. It'll help with killing all this sort of the gnats and stuff, and it's soap based, it's organic, and it can also help invigorate your plants as well. It helps to put the sheen back on plants, so it's really good, and it doesn't smell. And the other good thing about it is you can use it around ponds and things. Because it's organic, it doesn't affect the wildlife in the water and stuff like that. What's your opinion on green rhubarb? Karen, in what way? The rhubarb is rhubarb. You can get various colors, but they're pretty much flavors the same on them all. I'm not sure what you're getting with that. I grow lots of rhubarb. Some of the stems are green, some of them are red, depending on the varieties I've got. Unless you're on about something completely different. And if that's the case, let me know, because I'm not quite sure what you're getting with that one. Ah, right. Okay, I see now. So you waited months after planting it and waiting for the stems to turn red. Again, it might be down to the variety. You know, some rhubarbs just don't go red. Some go pink. Some go white. Especially if you force them. So you know, just have a look at the variety, and if they are supposed to go red, then maybe check your soil's pH and see whether or not you're in the required sort of levels for rhubarb. Okay, Anne asks, do you need several fruit bushes to pollinate them? I have black, red, and white new plants. Is that enough? Are we talking about currants, Anne? I'm not sure. If we're talking about currants, they will pollinate themselves. It's not a problem. You don't need multiple bushes. However, I have multiple bushes, but you do tend to get a better crop if you do. If you've got 2 or 3 bushes, but you don't. You could just literally have one of each color and they would pollinate fine. What's this one? Growing herbs, would you grow them together or in separate pots? Malcolm, I grow a herb bed, and the thing about herbs is they like really poor soil conditions, so a lot of drainage, especially the Mediterranean herbs. Basil and things like that I would put along my tomatoes. That's a really good companion plant for tomatoes or your basils. But as far as most of them, I would build a bed, I'd fill it with rock, and I'd put maybe just about sort of 8 or 10 inches of compost soil mix on the top of that. Not too rich a compost. So, and then I'd plant into that, make sure there's plenty of grit in that soil, and they do really well in there. And the thing about that is then the root systems can spread out, so you'll get a much better plant. They'll recover quicker when you harvest from them. That's what I would probably do. What's your favorite fruit, veg, and potato to grow? Well, my potatoes are a favorite veg to grow, but I do like growing the marrows or the giant marrows that I grow. I do that for fun and for competition, really. My favorite potato is Rudolph. They are a fantastic spud. They get a good size. They're great for jackets. They're great for roasts. They're great for mash. They're just really a good all-round spud, but they make fantastic roasties. And I love roast potatoes. So, so that with that. And fruit, I would probably have to say strawberries on the fruit, because we go through absolutely tons of them every year. However, I am really enjoying growing the bananas. Now, we lost the banana that we did the videos on, the mother plant. That died in the winter when we tried overwintering it. But I did take some of the pups home, and I have one of those pups through 2 pups of its own, and I've got them sat in containers at home. So they'll be making an entrance back to the polytunnel at some point this year. Flip the Twisted Dragon, thank you very much for your super chat. Any tips for growing garlic and potatoes inside? Don't. Garlic really needs that cold period so that it needs to vernalize. It needs to get that cold period so that those bulbs can split into individual cloves. Without it, they don't split, okay? So garlic does much better outside. Potatoes, I would only grow them inside for a number of reasons. If I'm showing and I'm trying for a giant, the possibility is that the heat would help that. But again, potatoes, they are huge plants. They grow quick, and they are much better outside, because if you had them in a polytunnel, they would keel over really quickly if it got too hot. And I would grow them in a container, because you need to be able to move them out of that tunnel that's going to get really hot. You never, in the height of summer, you're never going to keep it cool enough for the likes of potatoes. Peter's saying that the best spuds are Maris Piper. I've grown Maris Piper, and they are a great spud. I just happen to like the Rudolph better. Let's have a look what else we got here. I think we're pretty much caught up, guys. So if there are any more questions, make sure you put them below in capitals for me so that I can pick up on those. So there's lots of stuff been happening lately. The reason I'm doing a live today and not a video is because we've had absolutely atrocious weather here. When it hasn't snowed, it's rained, and it's been raining for the past week or so. So I haven't been able to get to the allotment and film. I could film in a polytunnel, but it's a little bit boring just standing in the freezing cold there with nothing to look at. I might as well just come here and do a live stream here with you guys and answer your questions. Now, I do have some plans for over the next few months, and we are going to be a couple of series of videos, so keep an eye out for those. I'm not going to tell you what they are, but there will be a series on potatoes, and there'll be a series on tomatoes, but I'm not going to actually tell you what the videos are based around, okay? And also, like I said, they're going to start the potato ones in the middle of March, and it's going to start with that Oakland Gardens discount for those buckets, okay, for those containers. So if you are in the UK, all right, make sure you sign up to my blog, the website simplifygardening.com, find the right-hand sidebar, and then put in your details, and I'll take you through to sign up for my blog post. And every month I'll send you a newsletter. It'll have a brand new code. So there's going to be actually 2 newsletters this month. There'll be a second newsletter going out in the middle, of March. So you'll have one on the 1st and then one in the middle of March when this deal starts, just based around this deal. So it is really worth getting that. It's going to be a substantial discount, guys. All right. So let's have a little look here now. Any tips for avoiding damping off in propagators? Neil, most propagators, they come with a vent, okay? You don't want it too humid in a propagator. You need it humid, but not too humid. If you're seeing lots of condensation dripping off the top of the propagator onto the bottom, it's too humid, you need to open that vent. It's okay having condensation around the sides and the top, as long as it's not dripping, okay? But it's the humidity. Now, another way to deal with this would be to, again, like the Vitapod I've got here, it's got little side vents, and you can blow a fan across that, so it entrains new fresh air as well. That will do it. Water from below and rather than from above, and that will also help with the damping off and stopping that. CW says he has thousands of questions. Am I ready? No. Yeah, fire away, pal. No problem. Okay. Any thoughts on a brassica tunnel interplanted with garlic? And so yes, that would work fine. What I will say is it depends on the brassicas. If you like putting sprouts or something that's tall like kale or something like that, and the garlic's below is fine. Just make sure that whatever you're growing isn't blocking light getting to the garlic, because it does need that light. And don't forget, garlic's only got a few leaves, and they're quite narrow, so the footprint for it to attract that solar gain is quite low. So the last thing you want to be doing is sticking them underneath like a brassica where it's constantly shaded. They're going to turn yellow and they could probably keel over on you. So if you are going to interplant with brassicas, things like sprouts and stuff like that take a while to get going. Do it with those type of plants. Okay. Fungus gnats, other than sticking traps, what can you do? Again, this is about putting a mulch down that will help. The soil surface is where they lay in their eggs, especially if you've got potted plants. So keep that moist. They don't tend to lay in too moist a soil, but if you mulch it, you're never going to have that problem. Good air circulation. Okay, they don't like drafts, and then that's really about what the only thing you can do, and of course putting up those yellow sticky traps. But you know, I mean, when you consider they're not really going to do that much damage, you're more likely to get damage from things like thrips and stuff like that. So so keep an eye on that. But I do have a blog post coming on fungus gnats. It's already written. I just got to finalize things. So stay tuned on the website for that. Okay, Dan Clark, have you used salt water for the minerals equals high bricks? We got Salt Lake City, Utah water for growing high bricks, aka high nutrient. Dan, I would be quite dubious at adding a lot of salt to my soils. And this is another reason why I don't tend to add sand and things to my soils. I'll go for grit instead. Salt can have a detrimental effect on soils and the soil life, especially when it builds up. Now, it's accumulative as well. It doesn't wash out of the soil, so it just builds up and builds up and builds up, and eventually it will get to a point where you start losing plants because of it. A lot of people throw Epsom salts around all over the place, and this is great for things like blossom end rot and stuff, but you need to be mindful about it. I've seen people throwing like mugfuls of the stuff in under one plant, and I'm thinking, you know, what are you doing? Like, you know, there's no need for that. So just be mindful on the amount of salt. And I tell you, I'm that wary about adding salts to my soil. When I've added seaweed, I've soaked the seaweed in plain water for a couple of weeks first, and then I've pulled the seaweed out and mulched that seaweed to get as much of that salt content out of it as possible. But yes, you're right. It would add loads of minerals and high bricks. You know, it'd probably be quite good for tomatoes, things like that, you know, your soft fruiting varieties. Liz, a couple of people are asking if you could add a direct link to your book. So if you could do that, that'd be great. So Phil, Tony, USA Zone 6B, would you rather grow potatoes in a 5-gallon plastic bucket or 10-gallon soft shell grow bags? 5 gallons too small. You need 8. ideally around 8 gallon, 10 at a push. Don't go much higher than that. All right, so I'd stay away from the 5 gallon. They're just too small unless you're going to put a single tuber in, but then you're going to be wasting so much compost and stuff like that. So I use the 30 litre, which is equivalent to 8 US gallons, and I put 2 seed potatoes for the main crop, and for the first and second early or determinate varieties, I put in 4 seed on 2 different layers. Okay, I would use the soft shells, but the only thing to be aware of is they're going to dry out a lot quicker than the containers will, so you'll need to water more. Okay. So Anne's saying she's just ordered Liz's book. That's great. Well done, Anne. You're gonna love that. Really are. Right. Here's the next one. Query: I've been looking for an affordable horticultural sand. Any tips? Can't find any in my local big store garden shops. If you can't get horticultural sand, you can use sharp sand. So go to your builder's merchant and ask for sharp sand, and that will do a similar thing. But you want the biggest particle size that they can give you. Don't get anything like play pit sand or silver sand or anything like that. It's no good to you. That will compact. But if you can get horticultural grit instead of sand, do that. That would be a lot better than sand anyway. I used a neem oil mixture for my potatoes and a couple of other veggies last year, but what is your go-to pest resistant mixture to spray throughout the garden as a whole? The SB Plant Invigorator. I use that because it's organic. If I need to, and it will control most pest species, and I do promote it in the pest video. So if Liz, if you're still about and you can find that pest video for me, or if not, guys, go to the YouTube search bar, type in pest control garden and simplify in there, and you'll find it. And in there I talk about the SB Plant Invigorator. It is a fantastic product, and I swear by it, and I use it right throughout my garden because it's a soap-based solution. But before we go on to that, guys, what I will say to you is allow your garden to sort itself out. Don't be so quick. If you start seeing things like whitefly and blackfly, don't get straight onto the soap sprays and stuff like that, okay? Give your garden time, because while you're drowning those, you could be taking out all of the beneficial insects in your garden as well. All right, so give those beneficial insects time to populate, and we spoke about this in the stinging nettle video. Give them time to populate the garden, and they will take care of most of the black fly and things like that with you. And other methods like taking the tops off new growth with black fly, especially like broad beans. They, notorious because broad beans grow so fast. The top growth is lush and green, and they love that. Pick it off and just leave the, get rid of them in one foul swoop. But SB Plant Invigorator is fantastic. If you are getting overrun with pests, then use that. Jay, do not spam with the same message. One at a time. Be patient, doing the best. Thanks, Jay. Appreciate that. Is 20 gallon too big for potatoes, or do you think it would be just too heavy? Right. I did a video. In fact, Liz and Mr. J were in that video. They helped me harvest some larger containers, and I grew as a trial some potatoes in 30 litre, 50 litre, 75 litre and 110 litre containers. And the 30 litre containers, for the volume of compost you use and everything else, give much better results than any of the others. And what we found was that the bigger the container went, the lower the yield you had. And I think the reason for that is it doesn't warm up as fast. It's harder to to control the root zone. It's got much more area to spread out, so the feed isn't contained in a smaller area, so the plant has to take it up. I think it's just numerous factors. I don't even use, I've got some 35 litre there, and I don't even use those anymore. I just stick purely to the 30 litre or the 8 US gallons. So, and I have tried building a potato tower box as well, and that didn't work very well also. So I'm finding 15 pound of potatoes out of one of those containers is fantastic, and you're not going to beat that. And for those of you in the US and Canada and places like that, I'm still working on getting some FBA containers out to you. So I'm trying to find a company where I can get them cheap enough so that Amazon will fulfill it. So it'll be fulfilled by Amazon, and Amazon.com, I'm hoping to get them shipped there, and then you can purchase them from there then, because I know you guys are struggling to find them out there. But for in the UK, Oakland Gardens do a fantastic job with them. But for you out in the States, just bear with me. I am still trying on that, but it's a lot of paperwork to sort out. Okay, I'm just scrolling through. Bear with me a second. Brilliant, thanks. I need sand for growing carrots and making a potting soil, so thanks for the great tips. If you're going to grow carrots and you're going to core out and then fill the cores with compost, any sort of builder sand will be fine for that, as long as you can fill whatever you're doing. But if you're going to grow them in the sand, then stick with the sharp sand, like I said. What do you do with last year's seeds but sprouting too early? So if you've seen my last video, we talk about all about sprouting seed potatoes. So if you haven't seen that, go and watch it, because it is packed with information. But if you're following and keeping your seed potatoes like I've done in the storing potatoes video, then those potatoes won't have started sprouting till around about February anyway, and only then you'll just start seeing just small little nodules. I pulled mine out and they just started peeping, so that's the perfect time then to start sprouting the potatoes as per the sprouting video. So you shouldn't be getting them sprouting early anyway. If you are, you're keeping them in too warm a location, and you need to cool that area down wherever you're keeping them. So Rob, England, hey Tony, love the videos. I'm thinking about trying to grow some mushrooms for my mum. Any tips for getting the mycelium started? Rob, I have a video on growing mushrooms in logs, and if you hunt that down, just put growing mushrooms in logs simplify into the search bar, and you'll find that video, and that's an in-depth video, and it'll give you everything you need to know. If you want to grow it from mushroom spawn in like hay or straw or something like that, then you can do that, and I'll have a video on that coming up later this year, so stay tuned for that. Glenn, what is an effective method of how to control cucumber beetles? Picking them off, firstly, would be my first port of call, and then secondly would be the SB plant invigorator, because that would suffocate them, because it's a soap solution. It creates a film around them, and then they can't breathe. We don't really suffer with cucumber beetle here, but I know friends who have used the SB plant invigorator to really good effect on them. So well, it's an answer for everything, unfortunately. Right, so another one here. MH, thanks, Tony. You're at 90 minutes. We'd keep you up all night if we could. Yeah, I know I'm at 90 minutes, guys, and I am going to be shooting very shortly because I've got to get home and help Tina with the kids. But I've got a little bit more time. So if some of you want to get your last minute questions down there now, and then we'll be closing up. David, thank you very much for the super chat. Hello, Tony. Great to have you back. I planted my Charlotte potatoes too early under fleece. Then the frost came. Do you think they'll survive? Yeah. So, David, the frost will have taken the tops off. And as I said earlier on, they will resprout, okay, and they'll regrow. So your potatoes will survive. Okay, but every time a frost comes, they're going to take the tops off. And the more and more they do that, the less of a crop you're going to get. And this is why I say to people, hold back on planting them. If you're going to plant them outside, then you need to be planting them about 4 weeks before your last frost date. And if you plant them inside, you can do it from the middle of March, but just have that fleece ready. Okay. How about nasturtium and marigold for protecting broad beans from blackfly? Does it work? Marigolds, they probably wouldn't do it. Nasturtium would help, but I haven't tried nasturtium around the broad beans. What you'll find with blackfly is once they see that really new lush growth, they'll get on it, and it doesn't matter what's around it, because it's the lush growth. They like the sap from it, so their mouth parts pierce and they take that sap. And the problem is, even with nasturtium, you're growing broad beans at an earlier time than you would with nasturtium, so the likelihood is it won't be established enough to really attract the blackfly anyway. So I would just be vigilant. You can either just squeeze the blackfly and squash them off, or wash them down with a soap solution like the SB Plant Invigorator or neem oil or something like that, or just make life easy for yourself. Take the tops off them and just dispose them in the compost, and then you're done. You know, it's the end of your problem straight away. You know. Jean-Pierre, that white fly or other of these problems, a friend solve it with a tobacco plant. She's going to give me some seeds to try. What do you think about that? Tobacco plant is okay. However, if you're growing any form of nightshade plants or tomatoes, things like that, don't put a tobacco plant anywhere near it, because you'll kill your tomatoes and things with tobacco. The nicotine that comes from the plant will kill your tomatoes. And this is why in the tomato video I suggest about this, and I also say that it's a bad idea to be smoking around these if you smoke as well. Okay. Thanks, Jay, for reminding everyone to stick that thumbs up for me. Okay, let's have a look what we got here. Can I trim my carrot tops while they're still growing? Cherry, yes, you can, if you want carrot root fly, because what you're going to do is you're going to create that carrot smell constantly around that area, and it's going to draw those in. I wouldn't recommend trimming them. I don't see why you would need to either. Don't forget, the tops of a plant is your engine for growing the roots itself. Okay, it's your solar panel, if you like, and that's what's allowing the plant to photosynthesize and create all of the sugars that's required to fuel the growth below the soil. All right, so there's no need to cut that top off at all. Chris, have you got an avocado harvest from the seeds you planted? How long did it take to get a harvest? Chris, no, you won't get a harvest. I done a follow-up video on those seeds I planted last year. So if you haven't seen that, go just type in avocado and simplify into the search bar. There'll be 2 videos there or 3 videos there, and there's a new one there from last year where I answered all of these questions based on the first video, because that first video's nearly had a million views now. I think we're at 980,000 views or something. So there was a lot of questions in that, and I made a new video answering all those questions. And basically it takes about 8 years for an avocado to fruit. You can speed that up by grafting, okay? I'm not going to be seeing fruit on mine for probably another 6 years or so. And I'm not in any rush. I like the foliage itself. I like growing the plants. So it's not a big one for me. But if they do fruit in 8 years' time, fantastic. I can speed it up by grafting them, and I may do that as a video to show you folks how to graft them. Okay, let me just scroll back up. So, right question. Hello from New York, USA. Beyond research I've already done, do you have any advice for the novice growing German chamomile from seed? Like all seed, okay, plenty of light. German chamomile, I think it's going to need 15 degrees plus to germinate. But once it does germinate, when you actually plant in the seed, just put a layer of vermiculite over the top of it, okay, because it is quite hard to get going. So put a layer of vermiculite over the top, not compost. When they germinate, soon as those first true leaves starts to appear, transplant them into their own cell tray, because you don't want the root system getting too established in a seedling tray, because they prefer their roots not to be touching other roots, okay? And then you're going to have issues later with separating them and everything else. But treat them like most herbs. Once you get going, a good gritty soil, things like that, and they should do fine for you. Right. So Oscar's thanking me for all I do. May you talk to us? How was the first time that I planted potatoes? So I've planted potatoes in every possible way you could probably think of. I've planted them in raised beds. I've planted them just straight in the ground. I've planted them, rows stout methods. I've planted in containers. I've planted them just in straight manure, all sorts. I've even tried planting just from a single chit in a plant pot and then raise the plant pots on. So I've done pretty much all of them. The very first time I grew them, I was 7 years old, and I grew them with my grandfather. And we dug out a traditional trench, put manure in the bottom of it, and that's how we planted them. And we had a great harvest. And that is a really good way of growing potatoes. I can't knock it. And it was the way that I learned when I first started growing. But like everything else, we try new things, and we find what works for us. And that's something that I think a lot of people don't seem to understand. When I suggest a way of growing something, or another creator suggests a way of growing something, some people, they take it personally because they grow differently, and they go, well, no, it works better this way, or whatever the case being. And what works really well for one person may not work for another. The locality, the soil conditions, the weather, the local microclimates, all sorts of things change on your growing conditions. It could be just down to the seed potatoes you're growing, whatever it is, okay? So what I want you guys to do is treat my channel just as a source of information, and you can pull bits of information out of it if it fancies you to try, and then if it works for you, great. If it doesn't, go and try something else. Don't be afraid to test things, and then keep what works for you guys. Recently I've just been testing different methods of soaking chili seeds in different concoctions to see which I had a better result with. These are, I know I can germinate chili seeds blindfolded, but sometimes some chili seeds can take a little bit longer, and you can speed that up by soaking them. And typically I do it in tea, but I've been trying some other things as well that I've picked up along the way, and I thought, well, why not? But yeah, so Oscar, for me, it was the traditional method by digging a trench, laying in some manure, putting my potatoes every foot apart, covering it over, building a mound, and just keep hoeing them up. And that was my original, that's how I first started growing potatoes at 7 years old. Okay, right, I'm going to do a couple more, guys, and then I'm going to call this one a day. When I smoked, I always wore gloves when sowing. The nicotine on my fingers killed the seeds. Yeah, see, and this is the thing, nicotine isn't good for plants, guys. They absolutely hate it, and you will watch your tomato die in front of your face if you've got, if you're smoking around it, or again, like Ballysillian allotment man has said, if you're got nicotine on your fingers and you're touching the seeds, or you're touching the leaves of the plants, things like that, that's being transferred to that plant. And we all know that plants will absorb through their leaves. So so just bear that in mind. Okay. Right. One more then. What tips would you give for a successful germination of aubergine? Start early. In fact, I've got some going just down by there now. They're little plug plants about this big. So aubergine need good bottom heat, okay? So start them early. I started these at the beginning of February, and they're in a propagator which has set at 21 degrees. So treat them like a chili when you're germinating them, and give them good bottom heat rather than top. Keep that compost quite moist with them as well. You don't want them to dry out. If they dry out, they won't germinate. All right, but good sort of temperatures, but from the bottom, and good humidity with them. Right, I think that's about it, guys. So I want to thank you all for coming in today and joining in this live chat. Let me see if I can get rid of that. I'm hoping that you've all learned something from this. So like I said again, now, if you haven't already and you want to pick up on these Oakland Garden buckets or the containers, discount codes and things, you need to get across to my website, simplifygardening.com, sign up for the blog post there, all right, and you'll get your newsletter every month, and the middle of March will be a second newsletter for March, and then you will have the discount code sent to you for that. The other thing, like I said, if you haven't already, get and check out Liz's book, because it is a fantastic book and it belongs on your gardening library shelf, guys. Seriously, you will learn so much from it. Liz is a wealth of knowledge, and if you haven't already, get across to her channel and subscribe to her as well, because Liz just nails it with her channel too. So if you like my channel, you're going to love Liz's as well. So other than that, guys, all it takes me to say basically is to keep gardening, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.